Welcome to Nice and Blunt. I'm Adam Mariancho, and these are your injury updates for Week 10. It's Saturday, and as always, we go through every single team, every single matchup, and tell you who is in and who is out. But to be honest, I feel like I've been keeping up to date with the injury news. If you've watched them in other videos earlier this week, most of them are accurate. So let's rip through it. Let's go through the list. We all know 4 teams are on bye: the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Bengals, and the Titans. And then the Broncos and Raiders have already played. So those teams are not mentioned in this video. But let's start in Washington, where Jaden Daniels is out with that arm injury. But there are some positive developments. There's a chance he comes back after the Week 12 bye. So they will reassess later in the season. They're getting a few more tests done. But it doesn't sound worst case scenario. There's a chance that Daniels comes back. But Mariota will get the start, so that's not ideal for the pass catchers. Terry McLaurin is out with that quad injury, did not practice at all this week. We already knew that heading into the rankings, so nothing changes. Debo is a bit more valuable, so is Zach Ertz, but with the quarterback change, a little bit less overall. On defense, their secondary is a bit banged up. Cornerback Marshawn Lattimore was placed on IR. I don't expect him back this year. And then there are a couple injuries at free safety. But in terms of their opponent, Detroit is overall very healthy on offense. Only left tackles Taylor Decker and Dan Skipper are injured. They are both questionable, but I assume they will play. On defense, free safety Kirby Joseph is out. But back to their offensive line, actually. Guards Christian Mahogany was placed on IR, and guard Mike Frazier is out for this game. So the offensive line for Detroit, not 100%. Otherwise, they're good to go without their free safety, Kirby Joseph. In Tampa Bay, running back Bucky Irving did not practice at all this week. He was ruled out early on. That foot injury is still lingering. So he's out. That's the 6th week that he is missing time, and I don't really feel confident he's coming back next week. They didn't put him on IR, but it feels like they should have. He has missed well over 4 games. But Chris Godwin, out with a leg injury, did not practice at all this week. That's the 5th week that he is going to miss, and it doesn't look like Jalen McMillan is coming back to the rescue. No update on Jalen McMillan. I could see him as a valuable stash, but at the moment, we have no idea when he's returning. He might not be available, even in the fantasy playoffs. But on defense, linebacker Hassan Reddick is out, and then on the offensive line, right guard Luke Haggard is questionable. In New England, Ramondre Stevenson is out, did not practice at all this week with a toe injury. So last week's fill-ins, Travion Henderson and Terrell Jennings, will get the same role this time around. Hopefully a touchdown does not get vultured by Terrell Jennings. But Kayshon Boutte is out as well, did not practice at all this week. And there is some optimism that they can return for their next game. But because it's on Thursday, the game against the Jets at home may have factored into why these 2 players were not available. I could see them returning next week, but it's not guaranteed. We'll find out later in the week, but not going to play in Week 10, so upgrade Travion Henderson, upgrade Demario Douglas, along with Hunter Henry and Stephon Diggs. On defense, linebacker Christian Ellis is out. For the Seahawks, their breakout rookie wide receiver last week, Torrey Horton, is doubtful to play this week with a groin and shin injury. He was full on Wednesday, but then on Thursday down to limited, and then he did not practice at all on Friday. So very bad series of outcomes. He is doubtful, not expecting Horton to play, but he did fill in nicely for Cooper Kupp last week, who is returning to the lineup most likely. He did not practice Wednesday with a heel and hamstring injury, but then on Thursday he was limited, and then on Friday he was full. So Cooper Kupp probably suits up. Maybe not a full bevy of snaps. And with Jake Bobo, another backup receiver, out, along with Darike Young, they are kind of depleted on the depth chart. I do think Rashid Shaheed will have an immediate impact for this team. Elijah Arroyo might also benefit as well because tight end A.J. Barner is questionable with a calf injury. Limited Wednesday, Thursday, but was full in practice on Friday. I assume A.J. Barner will be fine, but he is a game time decision. We'll find out closer to kickoff. And then on defense, defensive end Jaron Reed is out, along with cornerback Josh Jobe. He's also out. Linebacker Ernest Jones is doubtful. And then free safety Julian Love was placed on IR. In Arizona, their opponent did place Kyler Murray on IR, but the offense was better with Jacoby Brissett, so makes sense. Trey Benson still remains on IR. Their running back room is very hard to predict, so until he comes back, I don't really trust any particular guy, but after last week, DeMercado leads the backfield. On offensive line, right guard Will Hernandez is questionable. And then on defense, there are several injuries for Arizona. We have cornerback Will Johnson, who is out, along with cornerback Max Melton, both of their starters not available. So JSN and Rashid Shaheed, no downgrade whatsoever. At times, this is a tough matchup. Not this week. But linebacker Mac Wilson is also out, along with linebacker BJ Ojulari. He's also out. So in general, I would upgrade the Seattle offense. I think they're more convincingly going to win this game. In San Francisco, that Rams-Niners matchup, for the Niners, Ricky Pearsall remains out. He did not practice at all this week. Same with Brandon Ayuk. He remains on IR, essentially. Both DNPs. I have no idea when they're coming back. But Brock Purdy, the quarterback, is questionable with a toe injury. And although he is going to be the backup, it looks like he'll be somewhat available. He is a game-time decision, and they've already decided Mac Jones will get the start. So not going to push it with Purdy. Mac Jones already beat the Rams. Let's see if he can do it yet again. On defense, we all know about a plethora of injuries, but they also have 2 starting defensive tackles that are questionable, along with 2 linebackers that are also questionable. So just a bevy of injuries in San Fran, as always. For the Rams, only injuries to really speak of are at wide receiver, where Tutu Atwell is on IR, and then Jordan Whittington is questionable with a back injury, did not practice Wednesday or Thursday, and then was limited Friday. He is a game-time decision. I would not assume that he is available. So there is some opportunity for guys like Konata Mumfield, as well as fellow rookie tight end Terrence Ferguson. There is some opportunity. This team has been incorporating tight ends a bit more lately, but they incorporate all 4 of them. It's not like one player really benefits. So I'm still just trusting Puka and Adams. It's not really moving the needle, the injuries in LA. But their offensive line is fully healthy. Rob Havenstein will be good to go. For the Jets and Browns game in New York, Garrett Wilson is questionable with a knee injury, and he was limited all week in practice except on Friday when he was full. He upgraded up to full. And while he's a game-time call, I assume Garrett Wilson will be good to go. That's the news we were hoping for. Garrett Wilson is coming back. He's missed since week 6 with this knee injury. But one reason why they needed to trade for A.D. Mitchell was Josh Reynolds was placed on IR, so lack of depth at receiver has been the case for a while now. At least A.D. Mitchell has the opportunity in front of him. On defense, linebacker Kick Maui Goa is questionable. And then for the Cleveland Browns, Cedric Tillman is questionable as well. He was activated off of IR. He's been out for a while, and he does not have to compete with Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond is out with a foot injury, did not practice at all this week. So Tillman comes back to the offense, and Harold Fannin is a question mark. Not sure if Fannin goes because he did not practice at all on Thursday with a hamstring. Full on Wednesday, then downgraded to out Thursday. But on Friday, he was back in limited capacity. So he's a game time call. I would assume it's like around 50-50, but a little more pessimistic than optimistic. And if he does not play, I would definitely upgrade David Njoku. But I also see some opportunity available here for Cedric Tillman. I don't think Dylan Gabriel cares that much for Jerry Jeudy, and Tillman has been more involved in the red zone when he was healthy with Flacco. So I don't know what to make of Cleveland's offense in general. I only trust the tight ends, but if Fannin's not going to play, I think David Njoku becomes a very safe play alongside Quinshon Judkins. I would start Judkins and Njoku if Fannin can't go. Otherwise, those tight ends become flex plays. I still don't care for the wide receivers in Cleveland. But on defense, linebacker Carson Schwessinger is questionable. I assume he will play. But in Minnesota, that Vikings-Ravens game, Aaron Jones is questionable with a shoulder and toe injury. And he did not practice Wednesday, but then on Thursday and Friday, he was limited. I expect him to play. He's an aging veteran. I think he was just maintenance. I assume Jones will be fine. But backup tight end Josh Oliver is out, so maybe you give a little more value to TJ Hawkinson, but not a great matchup for him. I'm not dying to trust TJ Hawkinson. And then on defense, some positive news. Linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel returns to the lineup. He's missed for quite some time, and he is fully active. So that's positive. On the secondary, though, cornerback Theo Jackson is questionable. For the Ravens, everybody is healthy. No injury updates in the wrong direction since October 22nd. It's been 2 weeks, and the Ravens have been getting quite healthy. The Ravens are much healthier than the average team at this point in time. In Miami, Ollie Gordon is questionable with an ankle injury, limited all week in practice, expected to play, but is a game time decision. I only trust Devon Achane, but last time he played the Bills, he did have a vulture touchdown. Perhaps he can do it again. I doubt it, though. I wouldn't project it. Tight end Julian Hill is questionable, and with Darren Waller still on IR, Tanner Conner will get all the routes at tight end, but I still don't care. I'm not starting Tanner Conner in fantasy. On defense, defensive end Chop Robinson is out. Cornerback Rasul Douglas is doubtful, and then strong safety Ashton Davis is questionable for the Dolphins. In Buffalo, defensive end Mitchell Hecht was placed on IR for the year. Defensive end AJ Epinesa is also out, and cornerbacks Christian Benford and Taron Johnson both are questionable. Linebacker Shaq Thompson was ruled out as well, and then defensive tackle Daquan Jones questionable for the Bills. So in general, the main injuries for Buffalo are all on defense, but at least on offense, wide receiver Josh Palmer is coming back to the lineup. He's questionable with a knee and ankle injury and limited all week in practice. He's a game time call, but I do think Palmer will play. But in general, you don't trust the Bills receivers, even Shakir, not a safe start in a tough matchup this week. But Buffalo is otherwise healthy. In the Chargers-Steelers game, the Chargers are still without Omarion Hampton, and we've not expected him back until after their Week 12 bye. But there is some positive reports for him. He was working on the side this week in practice, so not with the regular team. He's not coming back until after the bye. But the fact that he's coming back just a little bit in Week 10 makes a Week 13 return that much more likely. I'm hopefully optimistic that we get Hampton back in 3 weeks after the bye. So that is good news to look forward to, but at the moment it's still Kamani Vidal. Every tackle, though, for the Chargers is out. Every single one they have is not healthy, and then that's pretty much been the case all year. But on defense, we know about all their injuries. They're depleted. There's also 2 cornerbacks that are injured. One is questionable, the other one is doubtful, and that's yet another injury for the Chargers. But in Pittsburgh, left guard Isaac Siumalo is out, and then linebacker Cole Holcomb is also out. Otherwise, their offense in fantasy is fully healthy. In the Colts-Falcons game for the Indianapolis Colts, defensive tackle DeForest Buckner is now on IR. Defensive end Tyquan Lewis is also out, along with defensive end Samson Ebukam, also ruled out. And then cornerback Charvarius Ward has been on IR for a couple weeks now with a concussion, but he was working on the side, and he probably does come back in a couple weeks. I would assume Charvarius Ward does return this year. But that's it for the Colts. The Falcons side of the ball is without left guard Matthew Bergeron. He's been ruled out. Their guard Chris Lindstrom is questionable on the right side and left side. Both guards are banged up. And then on defense, linebacker Leonard Floyd is out. Same with cornerback Mike Hughes. I don't think he plays, but he is technically just questionable. And then the only positive note is that linebacker Jalen Walker, their first round pick, is active. Their run defense has been trash in the last 2 games without him, and maybe him coming back to the field reasserts them as a good run defense. But they've been a good matchup lately. Jonathan Taylor should torch them, most likely. In the Texans-Jaguars game, there are plenty of injuries for the Texans. CJ Stroud is out with a concussion. He was ruled out early in the week, so Davis Mills will get the start. The matchup is phenomenal for Mills. I like him as a good streaming option. But maybe you're not bold enough to pick him up. Kicker Kaimi Fairbairn is out with a quad injury, did not practice at all this week, and he's been a good option. He's definitely one of the starting kickers I would want in fantasy this season. So maybe you just trust the Texans offense, but with Davis Mills and a backup kicker, it's not as ideal. They did sign Matthew Wright to the active roster. He is the new Houston kicker. So good luck with him. If you need to replace Kaimi Fairbairn, I do recommend Brandon McManus as your bye week fill-in in the Packers-Eagles game. That would be my preference off the wire among kickers who are low rostered. On the offensive line, right guard Ed Ingram is out. Same with right tackle Titus Howard. He's also out, so pretty banged up. The run game is going to be pretty bad this week. The Jags are a tough matchup. And then on defense, there are some corners that are missing. Nickel corner Jalen Petrie is out, and then linebacker Christian Harris also out. Cornerback Jalen Smith was placed on IR. In Jacksonville, Brenton Strange is on IR, and maybe he returns next week. They assumed he'd be back in week 11, but his backup Hunter Long is also out, so cannot trust a Jaguars tight end. You weren't trusting Hunter Long in the first place, so there's more opportunity in terms of targets because Travis Hunter's on IR and Brian Thomas Jr. is out. Brian Thomas is dealing with an ankle injury and did not practice at all this week. So last week it was his shoulder. He did play through it. This week it's his ankle. Brian Thomas might be missing quite some time. I have no idea when BTJ will return. But they are saying it's a low-grade high ankle sprain, and anything involved with a high ankle, that'll take some time. I don't care that it's low-grade. If it was a low ankle sprain, then I wouldn't care as much. But high ankle, that sucks. BTJ might give some good opportunity available for guys like Parker Washington and Jacoby Myers. But the matchup's terrible this week. Don't start him against the Texans. I'd like to wait and see what happens with them. And then on the offensive line, left guard Ezra Cleveland is out. And then on defense, nickel cornerback Jordan Lewis is also out for this game. In Green Bay, tight end Tucker Kraft is placed on season-ending IR, so Luke Musgrave gets some extra snaps. Jaden Reed is also out, and then Matthew Golden, rookie wide receiver, is questionable with a shoulder injury. Limited on Thursday, but then on Friday and Saturday did not practice at all. I am not expecting Matthew Golden to play. So that opens the door for guys like Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. I think they're a bit safer. The matchup's not the best against Philadelphia for Doubs, but I do still prefer him the most. And Christian Watson becomes much more appealing as a long shot. I like Christian Watson as a solid flex play. But another reason to trust them perhaps is because backup wide receiver Dontavian Wicks, also questionable, limited all week. He is expected to play. It should be his first game returning since week 7. So since he's not 100%, he wasn't contributing much when healthy. I mainly just trust Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson, while Golden is probably out. But on defense, cornerback Nate Hobbs is out. Defensive end Lucas Van Ness has also been ruled out. And then on offense, the O-line might be without right tackle Zach Tom. He's questionable, but I assume he will play. For the Eagles, center Cam Jurgens is out as well. Otherwise, the team is very healthy. And then on defense, they are getting some players back who were injured. Most notably, Nolan Smith, who's been on IR for a couple months now. He was full in practice on Friday. So the run defense, I think, is going to get much more difficult. Nolan Smith is a big deal. And then cornerback Adoree Jackson, he's the only one not expected to play. He did not practice at all on Friday. So maybe it's easier to throw on the Eagles this week. Running on them with the additions to the D-line, I would be afraid of. I don't know if this is a good matchup as advertised for Josh Jacobs. But in Chicago, DeAndre Swift, dealing with a groin injury, did practice this week in full on Thursday, but then on Friday he missed with a personal issue. So I don't know if he will be active. I assume they're expecting him to play, but obviously he's a game time call. I think he will be available, and I assume he'll play. So as long as he does, I would start him. The matchup is phenomenal against the Giants, but I do still think Kyle Monangai is going to be heavily involved, and I think both of them are very good running backs this week. I have them both inside my top 20, and given the weather's bad, I expect them to lean on the run, and reports say they will take a hot hand approach. So Kyle Monangai could be another smash start, especially if Swift is out. I'll give you a contingent ranking on Monangai in case Swift doesn't play, but even if he does, I would start both of them as top 20 running backs. If Swift does not play, Monangai is a must start. Luther Burden is back on the team. He's active. He missed last week with a concussion. And then Cole Kmet was in the protocol for a concussion as well this week, but he is active. He was full on Friday. He is good to go. So other than Swift, the Bears offense is fully healthy. No concerns there. However, on defense, defensive end Dominique Robinson is out. And same with linebacker TJ Edwards. He was ruled out as well. For the Giants, we know that Neighbors and Cam Scadaboo have been on IR for a couple weeks now, if not longer. And then center John Michael Schmitz is also out for this game. But on the offensive line, right tackle Jermaine Illuminor is also injured. He's questionable. I think he'll play, but not a guarantee. On defense, cornerback Paulson Adebo will miss another game. Free safety Javon Holland is questionable as well. And then linebacker Darius Muasau was placed on IR. On special teams, kicker Graham Gano did not practice this week. He has been ruled out for the Giants. So they're replacing him. I think it's Riley Patterson, if I'm not mistaken. It might be someone else, but I don't think you want the Giants kicker. There's a lot of wind in this Bears game. In Carolina, the last game to mention, Tet McMillan is questionable. He was full Wednesday and Thursday on practice, but then on Friday downgraded to limited, and that is not good at all. Anytime that happens late in the week, it's unlikely that they're good to go. So he's a game time decision. Even if he plays, he's not 100%. And honestly, I'm not sure that this is not good for Tet McMillan. So they weren't the safest offense to bet on in the first place. I think if anything, they just lean more heavily on the run, but the matchup isn't scary. So if Tet McMillan doesn't play, that's like 8 targets available that will be dispersed between Leggett, Cooker, and maybe Jatavian Sanders. So they become a bit more interesting, but honestly, I only trust Rico Dowdle and the Panthers defense this week. In the Carolina offense, I'm not excited to start anyone if Tet is not available. So that's bad news. I did lower him in the rankings, but then on the offensive line, right guard Chandler Zavala has been ruled out, and then backup right guard Brady Christensen has been placed on IR. So their offensive line is a bit banged up, especially at right guard. And then for the Saints in New Orleans, Alvin Kamara is questionable with an ankle injury, but he's also been playing through it for about a month now. So limited all week in practice. I assume he'll be good to go. I'm expecting him to play like always. But on the offensive line, right tackle Talisi Fuaga, one of their better O-linemen, has been ruled out. And then on the defensive side, defensive end Brian Breesy is also questionable. So that's it for the injury report, all the news and notes across the league. But before we get into my updated rankings, I also think the weather updates are very valid this week and probably going forward rest of season. Now that we're into November, weather will be a problem. So big updates across the league. Let's start in Berlin early in the morning. The chance of rain is 20%. That's where it starts to be a factor that I care about, but mainly the temperature is 47 degrees, and the Colts have not really been tested in outdoor conditions this season up until last week in Pittsburgh. So we'll see if they respond. I think it won't be a big problem, but maybe it does factor in. In Chicago, this is probably the ugliest weather of the weekend. We have 37 degrees in Chicago. So at that temperature, there's a chance of snow, and the rain is expected to die down by the time we hit the second quarter. So it might be a factor early in the game, but by the time it's halftime, I expect it to be over with. The precipitation will not be that relevant in the second half, if it's relevant at all. It's possible it's done by the time kickoff ensues in Chicago. It's mainly a lot of rain or snow in the morning, and then by the time the game begins, it's almost done, dying down. According to the forecast, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world, especially in the second half. But the wind is going to be 16 miles per hour, so that could sway some decisions in terms of play calling. In general, the weather's tough, but I still think the offenses are going to play well. Neither defense should scare you. In Miami, the temperature is 84 degrees, and there's a bit of humidity. There's also a 25% chance of rain and lightning. So maybe the humidity is a shock to the Bills system, but odds are it doesn't matter. There might just be a weather delay because of the lightning. Sometimes that does limit the offense. Sometimes the teams get into a bit of a funk when they have to wait for a while. But I think it'll be all right. I'm not too worried about it. The game will still take place. And then in New Jersey, it's going to be 60 degrees for that Jets-Browns game with a 25% chance of rain. Earlier in the week, it was reported at 55, so less likely for rain. Now, maybe they'll throw the ball a little bit more. But in Tampa, there's also a decent amount of rain, 25% chance as well. The temperature is also hot and humid, 81 degrees with humidity at 80%. Perhaps the Patriots are going to be a bit sluggish in this hot weather. But in North Carolina, the Panthers-Saints game is at 75 degrees, perfect weather. In Seattle, it's at 59, and the chance of rain is very low, so no concern there. In San Francisco, the weather is absolutely perfect at 72 degrees. And then in Washington, it's at 66, but there is a 20% chance of rain as well. In Green Bay on Monday night, there is no wind or rain to be a real factor. However, the temperature is cold as balls, 38 degrees in Green Bay. We're at least going to see the breath condensation on the screen. So those are all the weather updates. It's mainly just Chicago that has me a little concerned, and then maybe Miami and Tampa. The humidity plays a factor, but rain is otherwise kind of light, sporadically dispersed throughout the league. So that's it for all of the weather updates. Now let's move on to all of my rankings updates. And for the most part, all these injury updates were kind of things I already knew about earlier in the week. So at running back, I only changed one player in the ranks, and it's because I did a bit more digging on Devon Achane. He gets a divisional matchup, and I did not research his production against Buffalo for this one. After I did, I thought I was too low in my ranking at number 11. So I bumped him up 2 spots. I still prefer guys like Rico Dowdle and Quinshon Judkins, but obviously he's in the same tier as guys like Jacobs and Saquon. But the reason he jumps them is because he plays amazingly well against the Bills, an average of 21 points per game in half PPR in his 5 career games against Buffalo. He's averaging 112 yards from scrimmage, and he's also scored 6 touchdowns in 5 matchups against Buffalo. So did not score last time. Odds are it comes back to him. I would easily expect a touchdown for Achane, and given how well he performs, I think I got to bump him up. I had him a bit too low, and the matchup is not difficult at all. So I think the Bills matchup is good for him. He should be able to run all over them, and assuming these stats repeat, he will give you about 21 fantasy points this week. So definitely a must start. I could rank him even higher, but let's settle at number 9, and that means Jacobs and Barkley do get jumped by 1 spot. So they move down, but my opinion doesn't change. I'm just more excited about Devon Achane. And then otherwise, the only thing to mention at running back is my contingent ranking on Kyle Monangai. Right now, I have him back-to-back with DeAndre Swift at 18 and 19, and Swift is a game-time call. I think Swift will play, so let's just keep him there, but I think you'll get something similar to what we saw from Ashton Genty. A touchdown most likely puts you over 13 fantasy points, and the yardage might go over 100 for both of them. The Giants matchup is great. I would be starting both of them. I might be too low, honestly, on both. But if Swift does not play, I would rather have Monangai than Derrick Henry straight up. I'd still rather go Saquon and Jacobs, but Monangai would move up 7 spots overall. He would become my RB 12 at the position that is definitely a must start. So I'm already telling you to start him. At RB 19, I have him top 40 overall in terms of flex plays, and I'm definitely not benching him if I have him. So not concerned about Swift, honestly. I think he's a very good play. The matchup's great, and odds are he still gets a lot of volume. Swift is not going to get 80% of the touches just because he comes back for an injury. He's not 100%. Monangai will be legit. So definitely start him. Otherwise, my running back rankings stay the same. So I'll show you them here on the screen just to like isolate the position, because I will show you the flex rankings later. So if you just want to look at running back decisions straight up, I'll leave this up for another 5 or 10 seconds or so. You can pause it as you need it, and we'll move on now to wide receiver, where I didn't make any changes in the top 20. I feel very confident in my original rankings. However, I do think DJ Moore is a bit more appealing, as Rome Odunze feels a little more risky. The weather isn't going to be atrociously bad in Chicago. The first half might be bad, but the second half should be good. So DJ Moore, I bumped up 2 spots overall. I'd rather go DJ Moore than guys like DK Metcalf and Juwan Jennings, but that's really the only 2 players that move down instead of DJ Moore. Otherwise, your lineup should stay the same, if not for DJ Moore versus Juwan Jennings and DK Metcalf. But otherwise, I dropped down Rome Odunze 2 spots. So if you were deciding between Deebo Samuel or Wan'Dale Robinson versus Rome Odunze, I'd rather go with Deebo and Wan'Dale. Rome's bagel last week was just a little too concerning, not ideal at all. So a little bit less faith. The weather might be impacting them a little bit in the first half. So I'd rather just trust DJ Moore. After last week, he played much better. So minor changes between DJ and Rome Odunze, no longer back-to-back, but still within about 6 spots of each other. Otherwise, I did downgrade Tetero McMillan a total of 8 spots. I previously had him top 30. Now he goes down to number 37. So wide receiver 29, no longer a legit flex play. Now in the low-end options at that point, and honestly, I'd rather bench him at wide receiver 37. I think you could do better. You could probably get Christian Watson still off the waiver wire, along with Demario Douglas. They're still more available than Tet McMillan. So go for them instead of Tet. I think the late week addition to the injury report is really bad news, and I just don't feel good about it. This division game is probably going to be more low scoring than a shootout. So not happy with Tet McMillan, not dying to start him, but if he is active, he still remains top 40 at the position. So everybody else moves up 1 spot, but I did upgrade Christian Watson 4 spots overall. So players like Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, Rashid Shaheed stay put as Watson jumps them and Tet drops below them. But I feel more confident in Christian Watson because Matthew Golden is probably not going to play. And this matchup against Philadelphia is going to require them to throw the ball. So I like Romeo Doubs more. I didn't change my rank on Romeo Doubs. He's at number 27 at receiver, but Christian Watson moves up 4 spots at the position, now wide receiver 33. I think he's a good flex play. I would definitely see some upside if he gets at least like 6-7 targets. Wouldn't shock me at all. They will be down the field. So I like Watson more than Tet now. And then otherwise, outside the top 40, I did upgrade Darius Slayton just 2 spots, like above Tez Johnson and Rashad Bateman. The weather's a problem, but the Bears matchup's great for him. I think he's a little more interesting, probably a little safer in terms of volume than Bateman and Tez Johnson. So just 2 spots higher, not a big change, but a little bit higher. And then the only other player changing in my rankings would be Cedric Tillman, who is going to be active for this game. So I wasn't sure if they were going to bring him up off IR. Now that I know he is in a good matchup, I think he's more interesting, but only wide receiver 50. I still don't really want a Browns receiver, but he's only 5 spots behind Jerry Jeudy at the position. Jeudy at 45, Tillman at 50. I don't know for sure who's more valuable. If you told me Tillman is the guy you'd rather have, wouldn't be surprised at all. I've liked him for over a year now. Tillman has been one of my boys. So he moves up 8 spots. That's it for the positional changes though. So I'll leave the total rankings here on the screen for another 10 or so seconds. If you need it, you can pause it and make those lineup decisions. But let's move on to the quarterback position where Brock Purdy was taken out. I'm definitely not ranking Purdy anymore. Mac Jones will get the start. So Mac Jones does slot into the same tier I had Purdy in, but 1 spot behind him. I previously had Purdy above Daniel Jones. So Daniel Jones does move up 1 spot. And then Mac Jones was previously unranked. So he moves up 14 spots to quarterback 15. I'd rather go Mac Jones than Sam Darnold. However, that Cardinals matchup is looking a little less difficult with the injuries at cornerback. So Darnold is also a safe, solid floor play, but I think Mac Jones is just as good. I'd rather go Mac Jones straight up. And then I'd rather go Daniel Jones above them, but they're still outside my top 12. So in the top 11 is where I made most of the changes, and it was regarding Caleb Williams and Jackson Dart. I like them a lot entering the week. The matchup for both is phenomenal. However, the weather's going to limit them in the first half. And if you're telling me you're only getting half a game where it's not raining, and then there's also bad wind to factor in, I could see both of them kind of capped in terms of passing volume. And you're going to have to rely on the rushing stats, which could carry you. Definitely, I still think they're both solid starts, but I just have to bump them down. I don't think they're as safe or as appealing as guys like Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, Baker Mayfield, or Drake May. That Patriots-Bucks game is also kind of difficult with some weird weather, so I would understand ranking them above them. I have them in the same tier as those 2 guys, but I just think the rain and wind is too ugly to like fully buy into the best case scenario for Caleb and Jackson Dart. So good matchup. I still think they're top 11, but I previously had them top 7 at the position, and they're both moving down 4 spots. So Stafford, Herbert, Baker, and Drake May jump them. That's 2 spots overall. Otherwise, the only change is Daniel Jones moving up 1 spot above the Niners quarterback as Jones fills in for Brock Purdy. But that's it at quarterback. Let's move on to my updated tight end rankings, where the only changes are regarding the Cleveland Browns tight end. I don't know if Harold Fannin is going to play. He's questionable. And if he does not, then David Njoku looks way more appealing. So assuming Fannin doesn't start, I think Njoku becomes a top 10 play. The Jets matchup is good, and Dylan Gabriel mainly only focuses on tight end in the first place. I would consider him just as good as someone like Oronde Gadsden and Mark Andrews. A touchdown probably likely, and enough volume to carry you to perhaps 60 plus yards. I like Njoku quite a bit. So high upside, high floor. He becomes a top 10 tight end if Fannin won't play. So 8 other players would move down a spot as Njoku moves up from tight end 17 to tight end 9. And then Harold Fannin was at tight end 16. He'd move down to tight end 24. Even if he plays, I don't feel too good about it. The fact he missed practice entirely on Thursday is a bad sign. So pretty big risk factor. If he suits up, then definitely don't start Njoku with as much confidence. I would still rather go Njoku than Kyle Pitts, but not more than Theo Johnson. So Njoku would slot in at number 16 if Fannin is active, but Fannin, keep him at 24. Njoku, definitely start him if Fannin can't go. So just a contingent ranking. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with Fannin, but if he doesn't play, then Njoku looks way more tempting. And then last update to mention is at defense, where I did change my opinion on like 3 or 4 different teams. All the changes though are outside the top 14. And if you have the Bucks, Patriots, Eagles, or Packers, one of the better defenses I think worth stashing, then I wouldn't change my lineup because I think they're better. I think they're more valuable to hang on to. So I did upgrade the Bears by 9 spots, but at defense 15, they're not that appealing. The weather won't last all game long, so they're not the best play you could find, but definitely more valuable because of the weather. And then the Jaguars, given the backups they're facing, I do think are a bit more appealing. The Jags, I think I just ranked too low at 22, so moves up 5 spots to 17, but still not a safe option. I don't trust their defense, honestly. The Cardinals, I dropped by 7 spots. I previously had them at 13, and with all the injuries in the secondary, I don't think they're as exciting, so they're less valuable. 7 spots less. Number 20 overall is a defense I'm benching, and then I'm still benching the Giants, but they bump up 2 spots. The Vikings against the Ravens, I'm less excited about. I think I gave them too much credit, so down 4 spots against the Ravens. And then the Niners get jumped by the Giants and Bears. They move down 2 spots as well. So defense doesn't change too much. These are all my updates at quarterback, tight end, and defense inside the top 24 at those 3 positions. And then otherwise, the only other major update to make is at flex. So let's scroll through the flex rankings. For the most part, there aren't that many changes, very small nuances overall, but things did change. Someone requested tight ends be added to the mix, so let's show you where I would rank the tight ends. I did bump up A-Chain by 4 spots overall, so he's a little more appealing now, running back 9, not number 11, so better than Jacobs and Saquon. And then I realized I'd rather go with the running backs in the Packers-Eagles game over Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. So those Eagles receivers drop down 3 spots. I'd rather go Saquon and Jacobs. And then between them is where I would have ranked Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. Obviously, Bowers played like shit, but I still love their value, still think they're top 20 overall. And Trey McBride, I think, will be better than Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Otherwise, no changes at flex until we hit outside the top 18 at receiver. I would rather go Laporta, Kittle, and Goddard. Then obviously RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. But same with guys like Jameson Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. I think they're more valuable than the top 20 receivers. And then DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monungai, I think, are moving up a little bit. They jump Juwan Jennings and DK Metcalf, and so does DJ Moore. So they move up a little bit. Tyler Warren, I would have right between them. I think Tyler Warren will be less valuable than the Bears running backs, but more valuable than DJ Moore. And then otherwise, not too much changes, but Rome Odunze does drop down 5 spots overall. A little less excited about Odunze after last week's bagel. And then Dalton Kincaid and Oronde Gadsden would come in right behind him and Romeo Doubs, behind wide receiver 27, above running back 22. So if you have Jalen Warren or Kamani Vidal, and you also have Kincaid or Oronde Gadsden as flex options, then I'd rather go with those 2 tight ends as opposed to Warren and Kimani Vidal. But otherwise, I dropped down Tet McMillan by 11 spots overall. He's a lot less valuable. He was previously in the top 60. Now he's outside the top 70. But I have David Njoku and Andrews also in this tier. I'd rather go with them than Tet McMillan, but I'd also rather go with them than guys like Breece Hall and Quentin Johnston. But I do think Christian Watson is more appealing than them. Watson does move up 5 spots overall in the flex rankings. And then outside this tier, where I'm definitely starting to bench players outside the top 80 overall, I would still go with Dalton Schultz, Juwan Johnson, and Hunter Henry above Kamara, Aaron Jones, and DeMarcado. They're still inside my top 80. However, I'd rather go with them than players like Parker Washington, Alec Pierce. I bumped up Darius Slayton a little bit, but I'd rather go with him than tight ends like K. Otten, Theo Johnson, and Kyle Pitts. Colston Loveland also in this mix. Players I'd rather bench if I was looking to tight end at flex. I'd rather go with Schultz, Juwan Johnson, or Hunter Henry in the top 13. But otherwise, the only other major change would be Cedric Tillman entering the top 103. He moves up 18 spots overall in the flex rankings, but I don't think it's worth a start. I don't think even at wide receiver 50, I'd rather start him. And at this point, I'm not going to start guys like Luke Musgrave, AJ Barner, Zach Ertz, or Mason Taylor around tight end 20 in my rankings. So that is it for all of the updates at every position. On the screen now, you can find all of my flex rankings for not just running backs and wide receivers, but now also tight ends. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know down below. I will answer them before kickoff, as always. But with that in mind, the only thing left to update are my win-loss picks. And I'm not changing anything in terms of straight-up decisions. I am sticking with every team I have picked back on Monday. However, there is one line I would like to update against the spread. There is one that got a little bit easier for me. So I will change that, and I will take the Falcons getting an extra point. The line is now plus 6.5 if you're taking the Falcons. I think they're going to win straight up, honestly, but the difference between 5.5 and 6.5 is pretty negligible. So I'll take it. It's a little easier, but an extra point less than 7 probably doesn't change anything. In Cleveland, the line got more difficult. Now they're favored minus 2.5. So glad I took the Browns before the trade deadline. Pittsburgh now at plus 2.5. I took them at plus 3. So that's good for me. I'm not changing that. And then the Rams are also more difficult. I took them at minus 3.5. The line is now minus 5.5. They're heavy favorites. So I am sticking put, except with the Falcons. That line is now plus 6.5. And those are my picks against the spread. And that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. But my name is Adam Riancho. I will see you next time. I hope you win in week 10, and good luck. Thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.